you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me.
The bell and the robins call us together in covenant to awaken in our hearts understanding, love, and acceptance, that we may grow into who we are. Today, let us especially remember our covenant to affirm and promote the third principle, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth. Good morning. Welcome to virtual worship with Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation in formerly Lenape territory, White Plains, New York. I'm the Reverend Meredith Garmon, minister.
I'm Tracy Brenneman, Community UU religious educator.
Good morning. I'm Adam Kent, CUUC music director.
Welcome to this home of liberal religion, which upholds four truths.
It's a blessing you were born.
It matters what you do.
Your experience of the divine is true.
And you don't have to go it alone.
So thank you for being here. It's so good to be together. Our shared light is a beacon of hope.
It is the Sunday at the end of the third full week of spring. The sun is in the sky today at White Plains latitude, 2 minutes, 38 seconds longer than it was yesterday. And the moon tonight will not be seen because it is a brand spanking new.
And when the crescent of this moon is first seen by the official sighting committee in Mecca, then on the Muslim calendar, Ramadan begins. The month-long observance of fasting, prayer, reflection, and community is expected to begin in the U.S. this year, tomorrow evening, Monday, April 12th. Ramadan Mubarak.
And a special welcome to our visitors. If you are a first-time visitor, we invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. You'll find a link to the order of service on our website, cucwp.org. There you will also find other resources to help keep us connected during this time, and a donate button. For April, our Share the Plate funds go to the Westchester Community College Foundation Student Emergency Fund. We're able to take contributions via the donate button for your pledge, for the plate share, and for the minister's discretionary fund.
And now, Board Chair Joe Majak has some news and will then lead us in lighting our chalices.
Hi, I'm Joe Majak. As the chair of the board for this congregation, I welcome you. Did you know that last weekend, the CUUC Spring Fling for All Ages attracted approximately 30 members and their families to our amazing grounds? For 4 hours, a variety of fun activities and exploration of the natural environment of our grounds put a smile on many faces. So good to reconnect and gain inspiration from the powerful energy of springtime. Thanks to Tracy Brenneman and Vice Wilson for their skillful organization and guidance in delivering a joyful in-person experience. And now it's time to light the chalice. On the Sunday at the end of the third full week of spring, we dedicate our chalice to the third principle of our faith, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. Please join with me in the chalice lighting words from Leslie Paul Casbah. Flame of fire, spark of the universe, that warmed our ancestral hearth, agent of life and death, symbol of truth and freedom, we strive to understand ourselves and our earthly home.
In 1534, England's Henry VIII maneuvered Parliament into declaring him head of the Church in England, independent of papal authority. Yet there was no change in doctrine, liturgy, or practice, at least not at first. Protestant ideas gradually began infiltrating the Church of England from Protestant refugees flocking into England, which Henry was obliged to welcome because, having alienated his Catholic allies, he was now dependent on fostering alliances with Protestant powers. After Henry's death in 1547, Thomas Cranmer, Archbishop of Canterbury, was keen to bring Protestant reform to the Church of England. He invited Protestant scholars from the mainland, which is what brought Bernardino Ochino and Laelius Socinus to England, where they met each other. Cranmer produced the first Anglican Book of Common Prayer in 1549, reflecting a significant shift toward Protestant theology. In keeping with the Protestant doctrine that salvation was by faith alone, Cranmer's Book of Common Prayer removed from its source material any idea that earned merit contributed to salvation, and the Protestant doctrine of predestination is implicit throughout the prayer book. The Catholic Queen Mary's reign began in 1553 and revoked Cranmer's liturgy. At that very time, the 1550s, over in Transylvania, Queen Isabella was content to be a Catholic ruler of a Protestant kingdom, tolerant of both Protestant and Catholic, but not England's Queen Mary. She tried hard to return England to the Catholic fold. Nearly 300 religious dissenters were burned at the stake. But Parliament resisted Mary as they could, and when her 5-year reign ended, Elizabeth I re-established the Church of England as independent from Rome and reinstated worship based on Cranmer's Book of Common Prayer. We have a special opening hymn today with words by Tom Snell, music director at First Unitarian of Rochester, New York. He wrote it over a year ago when online worship services were just beginning. And now our Adam Kent and Kim Force have made this recording. Please sing along. Kindred, we now meet to worship.
Kindred, we now meet to worship, reaching out through screen and phone. Though we dwell in isolation, we don't have to be alone. Worshiping beyond our building, our connections no less real. Though we cannot meet in person, covenant unites us still. Siblings share a song of gladness, lifting spirits, spreading cheer, so that in these days of sadness we won't be consumed by fear. In this time of mass confusion, sickness, loss, and overwhelm, let's encourage one another. Hands not joined, but hearts are held. Friends, be gentle with each other. There's so much we're going through. May this be a time for healing, holding space for grieving too. Bodies, minds, and hearts are weary. Anguish fills the aching soul. But we know with perseverance, broken hearts can be made whole.
Good morning. In his piece of the month for April, Tchaikovsky celebrates the snowdrop flower with this bit of verse. The blue, pure snowdrop flower, bravely piercing the snow crust, the last tears over past griefs, the first dreams of another happiness.
If you have a joy, sorrow, or milestone that you'd like to share, I invite you to enter it into the chat now. As you do so, please make the first word be either joy, sorrow, or milestone so that as Tracy scans through the chat stream during the prayer, she can easily identify which messages are meant for her to say out loud. And as always, I remind you, the part of the prayer where your words are spoken will not be included when the service is posted later on YouTube. And now, the spoken invocation, and then sing along, please, with the sung invocation. Words of invocation from Reverend Erica Hewitt. As we enter into worship, put away the pressures of the world that ask us to perform, to take up masks, to put on brave fronts. Silence the voices that ask you to be perfect. This is a community of compassion and welcoming. You do not have to do anything to earn the love contained within these walls. You do not have to be braver, smarter, stronger, better than you are at this moment to belong here with us. You only have to bring the gift of your body, no matter how able your seeking mind, no matter how busy your animal heart, no matter how broken. Bring all that you are and all that you love to this hour together. Let us worship together. Now let us affirm together the aspiration from Spirit of Truth. I invite you to sing along with Kim and Georgiana.
Spirit of truth, that dwellest in the mountain, descend, we pray thee, to the marts of earth. Give us to hear the rustle of thy garment. Grant us to feel thy shadow near. So may we find the strength to stand face forward, courage to walk toward the dawning day.
The mission of Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation is the covenant of this congregation. Would all the members and visitors who would like to affirm it along with me? We covenant to nurture each other in our spiritual journeys, foster compassion and understanding within and beyond our community, and engage in service to transform ourselves and our world. How much courage Clara Wieck must have had to defy her tyrannical father Friedrich and marry the man she loved, the composer Robert Schumann, and how much more courage it must have taken to stand by Robert Schumann as he declined in mental health as she raised their 8 children, all while maintaining her career as a concert pianist and composer. Here is one of her works. This is her Mazurka in G minor.
This is Charlie McNally. Perhaps you've been wondering how you can have a positive impact on the climate crisis, how you can reduce your carbon footprint. Are you aware that all Westchester garbage gets incinerated in Peekskill, resulting in poorer air quality, particularly in that area? Well, removing your food scraps greatly reduces the volume of garbage to be incinerated. Michelle and I have found that we're down to less than 1 can of municipal garbage per week. We are taking our food scraps to our local collection facility in Greenburgh about once a week. Participating local municipalities cart their food scraps to a large facility near Kingston, New York, and within a few months, these food scraps are processed or recycled, turned into fertilizer, and returned to the soil. When this fertilizer is used, much needed nitrogen goes back into the soil. To greatly reduce your carbon footprint, if you have the appropriate space, you can compost most of your food scraps. The plus of establishing your own compost bin is that the compost items don't have to be carted anywhere by your municipality or anything, and you can include yard waste in your backyard composting, leaves, grass, and plant trimmings. The minus is you can't include protein food scraps, which means no meat, fish, bones, or skin. Janet will now show you how easy it is to separate your food scraps from your garbage and reduce your carbon footprint.
Thank you, Charlie, and welcome to my kitchen. I'm going to show you how easy it is to collect food scraps. I have a collection system here. I've got my food scrap bin, which I keep on the counter all the time. I have my transfer bin, which I put the bags from the food scrap collection bin into the transfer bin and then use that to take them to the local recycling facility. I also have a roll of 25 compostable bags that go into the bin to collect the food scraps in so I don't have to touch them with my hands. Anyway, where can you buy these items? Greenburgh Nature Center is selling these 3 items for about $20. You go onto their website. The sale is on the first Friday of the month, but you have to have pre-ordered. So that's an easy way to get these items. Some municipalities are also selling them. You can always buy these things on Amazon. Charlie has a fancier food scrap bin that he keeps on his countertop. I believe we have a picture of that. So you could buy something like that directly from Amazon. What can go in here? Well, anything and everything that's edible can go in here, and a few things that aren't edible. First of all, I've saved a few items. I've got an orange peel here. I've got my tea bag, or coffee grinds could go in here. Just make sure if you're using tea bags that they don't have any staples in them. Banana skin, any and all meats, fish, eggs, any of that product can go in here. You wouldn't put those in an outside compost pile because they would attract vermin and they don't break down quickly enough in small compost piles. But this is going to a large facility, so this stuff breaks down actually in about 60 days. You might not think of it, but plants that you have around the house that have seen better days, that can go in here. And let's not forget paper products. Paper towels, as long as they don't have cleaning supplies on them. Paper napkins that you've used, all of that can go in here. So once this bag is full, just tie it up. I won't take the time to do that now, but it is pretty full. Tie it up and put it in your transfer bin. This will hold 3 to 4 individual bags. For Steve and I, it's about, I'd say every 10 days or 2 weeks we make a trip to the recycling center with these. Our regular garbage is down to maybe 1 bag a week. We've really found that using food scrap recycling has greatly reduced the amount of garbage we send to be incinerated. Anyway, once you've got that collected, you take it to your facility, and I believe that JC is going to talk to us about what happens at the new Get Anyway facility. Take it away, JC. Thank you.
Hi, I'm JC, here at the Gedney Way Recycling Yard in White Plains. Hopefully you're aware that White Plains has set up a collection point for food scrap recycling right here at the Gedney Way Recycling Facility. Charlie talked about how important it is to remove food scraps from your weekly collection, and Janet spoke about how easy it is to collect your food scraps to be recycled. So if you live in White Plains or one of these other towns in Westchester, your local town has made it even easier for you to participate in food scrap recycling. If you don't live in one of those communities, but you have a backyard, you can still compost most of your food scraps right at home. You'll be amazed by the amount of food scraps that you can keep out of your regular trash, reducing the garbage that's incinerated, and really have a positive impact on our planet. If you have questions, please join us at our Zoom forum following today's service. The link to the forum can be found on the CUUC calendar on our congregation's website, cucwp.org. We hope to see you there. It's that easy.
Don't go yet. We have breaking news. The White Plains Sustainability Committee has undertaken to make food scrap starter kits available to White Plains residents and is working with us, the Environmental Practices Group, to help distribute them. If you would like to order a starter kit, please email me at mcnally@pobox.com and we will schedule a distribution time in our congregation parking lot at a convenient date in the coming weeks, most likely on a weekend.
I love you, I love you too, I love you too. When you smile, I'll smile along. When you cry, my comfort comes. And when you walk, I'll be beside you, holding your hand. When the sun come out, we'll play. I'll never be far away. And when you tell me that you love me, this is what I'm gonna say. I love you too, I love you too. I tell you I love you, I love you too, I love you too. Like the fish loves the sea, like the honey and the bee, like a lizard loves to climb up into a tree, like a bird loves to fly way up in the sky, like a worm loves to go way down low. I love you too, I love you too. I tell you I love you, I love you too, I love you too. Like the grass loves to be green, and the earth loves to be clean, like the sun loves to shine, and the monkey loves to climb. Hey, it happens naturally, and that's the way it's got to be. Now the worm still loves to go way down low. I love you too, I love you too. I tell you I love you, I love you too, I love you too. I tell you I love you, I love you too, I love you too. From the first time that I saw you, I knew that it was true. There'd be a lifelong time to spend around the corners, around the bend, up the hills and through the valleys. No matter how things change, I love you too, I love you too. I love you too, I love you too. I tell you I love you.
Spirit of love and light, spirit of life, we bring our whole selves to this space, and here we find comfort. Here we find support. Here we find community. Our hearts are filled with gratitude for the budding and blooming world around us, breathing life into these times, carrying a promise of new beginnings and the continuation of familiar cycles. It's clear that the life, death, life is a pattern at the center of the universe: renewal, transformation, regeneration, healing. As the earth cycles through familiar patterns, so too does the world around us. We can hear the earth and her people cry out. In Central America, where violence and increasing food shortages are sending more and more refugees, many of them children, north. In Minnesota, as we witness the trial of yet another law enforcement officer who applied deadly force and the ongoing traumatization of the Floyd family, along with too many others, and the chronic trauma inflicted on communities of color. As the pandemic continues and many still ache for reunions with loved ones, this week in Brazil and India, COVID-related cases and deaths reached new heights, and we are reminded of the disproportionate effects of the pandemic on members of the global majority around the world and in our own communities. And in the US, where legislators in Arkansas have banned gender-affirming care for transgender youth, while other states work on similar legislation, these resonate at the depths of pain. Yet within our cries is the ripe soil of transformation's hope. We can see places around the world, in our communities, our homes, and in our bodies where resurrection is being lived boldly and joyfully. We celebrate the child in California, Lily, who survived cancer and now raises money and awareness by selling record numbers of Girl Scout cookies and donating to children's research and treatment centers. In Egypt, where archaeologists have uncovered a 3,000-year-old city, revealing the vibrancy of that ancient culture. In India, where fisher folk save their catches of ocean plastics to be used to rebuild roads from recycled materials. In England, where conservationists have built giant sandcastles to ensure martins have a nesting home for years to come, as urban developments have taken much of their natural habitat. In all of these acts and under each cry is the beating heart of love. May we have the courage to keep living toward resurrection's new bloom. May fond memories we have with loved ones be a comfort to us during difficult times. May all who search find the community we are so grateful for, the community that Starhawk calls forth with these words. We are all longing to go home to some place we have never been, a place half remembered and half envisioned we can only catch glimpses of from time to time. Community. Arms to hold us when we falter, a circle of healing, a circle of friends, somewhere where we can be free. May it be so. For all that has been said, and for all that we carry in our hearts, we observe a moment of silence.
calling all you hungry hearts, everywhere through endless time. You who wander, you who thirst, I offer you this heart of mine. Calling all you hungry spirits, all the lost and the left behind. All I can, I'll share with you, your joy and your sorrow, I make it mine.
This is a recently discovered work by the African-American composer Margaret Bonds from the south side of Chicago. It's called Tang American.
Have insight. We just mean noticing the way your mind constructs your reactions to things. Having insight isn't so hard if you determine to do it. Let's say you've had a frazzling day and you went out and you get back and your partner says, "Did you get eggs?" Eggs had not been discussed. You didn't know there was any need for eggs. Irritation arises. Your body tenses. There's a touch of sadness there. The stimulus was the casual, neutral question about eggs, but the stimulus has to mix with a lot of other causes: stress, sensitivity to criticism from growing up with a fault-finding parent, guilt about not paying more attention to household things. All those factors had to combine to produce the irritation, tension, and sadness you felt. Insight is seeing in the moment how your mind colored your perceptions and turbocharged your emotions. Shift attention away from external causes, like what someone said to you. Look for causes inside your own mind, such as how you interpret what was said, attribute intentions to the speaker, or feel especially prickly because of your history with that person. Ask yourself, below the hard and defended stuff like anger or justifications, what am I really wanting deep down? What material here is from a time when I was younger? What am I trying to control that's not controllable? How is my gender, temperament, culture, or personality shaping my reactions? With practice, insight improves and reactivity abates. For the rest of why and how to have insight, see the post at cucmatters.org. The link is in your eCommunitarian. I invite you now to join in singing along with the Foothills Unitarian Church, our hymn number 1014, Answering the Call of Love.
The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning, when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of
Today, we will pay a visit to Jeremy Bentham, drop in on an ethics seminar in 1990, allude to an episode from my dating life, and then go to Nazi-occupied Poland. We will entertain the notion that activism is not most fundamentally about producing outcomes, but about living as who we are. We'll consider what Eastern traditions have to say about that and visit a scorpion-stung Swami by the banks of the Ganges. We'll give a wave to Mary Oliver's wild geese and stand for a moment on the side of the misty mountains with the fellowship of the ring that had just emerged from the mines of Moria. And finally, we'll join A.J. Muste in the 1960s on the sidewalk just outside the White House. As always, it'll be a ride, and I thank you for joining me for it. First stop, Jeremy Bentham. In the 18th century, Bentham advanced an ethical theory called utilitarianism. The moral person, he said, is the one who acts so as to produce the greatest good for the greatest number. If you have ever seriously tried to live by this maxim, then you began to realize some difficulties. How do you measure good? If there's an 80% chance that action X will produce 3 or more units of a good, a 10% chance it will produce 4 or more, and a 20% chance it will produce -5 units, but action Y has a 50% chance of producing 1 unit of good and a 50% chance of producing -1 units, then do you do action X or action Y? You would spend all your time estimating probabilities and doing the math, and that's assuming that there was a clear and constant way to know what 1 unit of good was. What about diminishing marginal return, where some result would have 1 unit of good by itself, but the 100th unit of the exact same thing isn't nearly so helpful? And what about time frame? Short-term goods can turn out to be longer-term negatives, and short-term harms can have longer-term benefits. And how much of the good depends on what other people do in response, which makes estimating the odds essentially hopeless. For all these difficulties, impossibilities really, of utilitarianism, Jeremy Bentham's way of thinking about how to be a good person represented a radical shift with profound implications. This weird idea that there are measurable units of good had a corollary: equality. Good is good no matter to whom it happens. The good of or the harm to the poorest peasant counts as much as the good or harm to a king or queen, unless the effects on the monarch would produce effects on the population, each member of which, again, counts equally. For Bentham, this even applied to non-human animals. He wrote, "The question is not, can they reason, nor can they talk, but can they suffer? Why should the law refuse its protection to any sensitive being?" We spend a lot of our lives thinking at least a little bit about what to do, estimating what sort of effects we might expect. We can and do work for desired outcomes, even when we aren't sure of the odds of attaining them, and we can't quantify the good. Bentham's enduring contribution is to tell us to weigh the interests of other people, indeed other sentient beings, equally with ourselves, to weigh each as the equal of any. This is also impractical and impossible, but the very idea of it shifted our moral imagination. As appreciative and grateful as I am for Bentham and subsequent utilitarians for insisting that everyone's good counts equally, and as much as working for outcomes consumes so much of our lives, there's something else. There's more to being a good person than producing outcomes, even if your outcomes are way above average and they benefit everyone. Last month's theme, integrity, and this month's theme, trust, invite us to reflect particularly on what is a good life independent of producing results. On this topic, there's a poem that means a lot to me. I have shared it with you before, but it's been a few years. Let me tell you how it came to my awareness, and then a little background about the poet, and then I'll share the poem. In 1990, I was a graduate student at the University of Virginia taking an ethics seminar taught by Cora Diamond. We were considering various angles of critique of utilitarianism when Professor Diamond passed out photocopies of a poem by Zbigniew Herbert, the envoy of Mr. Cogito. I took that photocopy of Herbert's poem home from Cora Diamond's ethics seminar and pasted it on the side of my metal filing cabinet and covered it with a protective layer of clear packaging tape. 10 years and several moves went by. And one evening, my date and I came back to my place, and she happened to notice my filing cabinet and the poem affixed on the side. Her name was Laura Kim Joyner. And I believe that was our third date. We read together the lines of the poem and found ourselves crying. If I wasn't already in love with her, I was then. The poem's themes: attain the good you will not attain, the importance of what we do and live for, even if it will produce no results, have been touchstones for us in our life and ministry together. A word about the poets. Polish poet Zbigniew Herbert was born in 1924. He was a month shy of his 15th birthday when the Nazi tanks rolled into Poland in 1939 September, beginning a 6-year period of occupation of his homeland. The young Herbert continued his studies in secret classes organized by the Polish underground, and in time became a member of the Polish resistance movement. Later, at age 50 in 1974, Herbert published Mr. Cogito, a collection of 40 poems. The titles of the book's poems almost all reference Herbert's everyman, Mr. Cogito. The book's last poem is the envoy of Mr. Cogito, Przeslani Pana Cogito, also sometimes translated the message of Mr. Cogito. Whether the titular envoy is bringing a message to or from Mr. Cogito is not clear, but the message reminds us that life includes more than utilitarian calculation. We are called to an integrity and trust that ultimately transcends producing outcomes. As I read the poem, I imagine what it must have been like to have been in the Polish resistance. It would have demanded courage that could not have relied on hope, for realistically, the resistance had no hope. In that world at that time, it was evident that evil had won and would continue. Had members of the resistance acknowledged any moral relevance to utilitarian calculation, they couldn't have given their hearts and their lives as they did to the task by which they chose to be defined. For all reasonable evidence pointed to the futility of that task. A different moral understanding was necessary. Resistance under such circumstances is not about winning, not about accomplishing results. It's about the requirements of decency, integrity, and trustworthiness, about what in that situation a decent life, however brief, would be. Put out of your mind the idea that you might be doing any good, Herbert tells us. To join the resistance is to commit each day to activities that could easily make any hour your last, and to abandon hope that any good could come of this. You join, if you do, because you are called to be a resistor rather than a collaborator. You do it to be who you are until they catch and kill you, as they surely will. It's about being a worthy person, not about getting anything done. It's about the life that leads to death, but also about the death that opens a possibility for genuine and fearless life. The Envoy of Mr. Cogito, by Zbigniew Herbert, translated by Bogdana Carpenter. Go where those others went, to the dark boundary, for the golden fleece of nothingness, your last prize. Go upright among those who are on their knees, among those with their backs turned and those toppled in the dust. You were saved not in order to live. You have little time. You must give testimony. Be courageous when the mind deceives you. Be courageous in the final account. Only this is important. And let your helpless anger be like the sea whenever you hear the voice of the insulted and beaten. Let your sister's scorn not leave you, for the informers, executioners, cowards, they will win. They will go to your funeral and with relief will throw a lump of earth. The wood borer will write your smoothed over biography. And do not forgive. Truly, it's not in your power to forgive in the name of those betrayed at dawn. Beware, however, of unnecessary pride. Keep looking at your clown's face in the mirror. Repeat, I was called. Weren't there better ones than I? Beware of dryness of heart. Love the morning spring, the bird with an unknown name, the winter oak, light on a wall, the splendor of the sky. They don't need your warm breath. They are here to say, no one will console you. Be vigilant. When the light on the mountains gives the sign, arise and go. As long as blood turns your dark star in the breast, repeat old incantations of humanity, fables and legends, because this is how you will attain the good you will not attain. Repeat great words. Repeat them stubbornly, like those crossing the desert who perished in the sand. And they will reward you with what they have at hand, with the whip of laughter, with murder on a garbage heap. Go. Because only in this way will you be admitted to the company of cold skulls, to the company of your ancestors, Gilgamesh, Hector, Roland, the defenders of the kingdom without limit and the city of ashes. Be faithful. Go.
By the time he composed this bagatelle in B minor, Beethoven's hearing would have deteriorated to the point where he could communicate with friends only in written form. He had had to abandon public performance. He could no longer hear the applause of audiences for his work. And yet, he persisted.
Grace has its own way of shaping what our hearts bequeath it. The toil of body and soul we offer up to the universe. And what the universe makes of it is not ours to say. Is the world making any progress to being more fair, more just, more kind? I don't know. The COVID pandemic made a number of the fault lines in our society more vividly evident. Whether there will be lasting progress, however, is never clear. It may be disheartening when desired outcomes have not been achieved. It's less disheartening if we understand that achieving desired outcomes is not the main reason for activism. We inherit a Western philosophical tradition that has stressed consequences, as in the utilitarian dictum that you should act as to produce the greatest good for the greatest number, but also in Kant's categorical imperative that tells you to imagine the effects on the world of everybody else adhering to whatever ethical principle you might be following. But what you do isn't just about the effects it has. It's about who you are. Your actions shape your being. Eastern traditions are a bit clearer on this point. From the Hindu tradition, for instance, comes this teaching. If I chop down a tree that blocks my view, each stroke of the axe unsettles the tree, but it leaves its mark on me as well, driving deeper into my being, my determination to have my way in the world. The Bhagavad Gita tells us those who perform actions without attachment, resigning the actions to God, are untainted by their effects as the lotus leaf by water. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer in sacrifice, whatever you give, whatever austerity you practice, O son of Kunti, do this as an offering to me. Thus shall you be free from the bondages of actions that bear good and evil results. In another Hindu text, the Bhagavata Purana praises those who have no desire for the fruits of their actions. We lose our center when we become anxious over the outcome of our actions. Do without attachment the work you have to do, says the Bhagavad Gita. A tale tells of a yogi meditating by the banks of the Ganges. He repeatedly rescues a scorpion that falls in the river and is repeatedly stung by it. When asked why he does this, the yogi explains, it's the nature of scorpions to sting. It's the nature of yogis to help when they can. Reading that story, it occurred to me, as it perhaps would have occurred to you, that the yogi might have been more helpful had he placed the scorpion somewhat farther away from the water so it wouldn't keep falling in again. We do need to take practical effectiveness into account. We also need, and this is the greater need that we in the West are prone to overlook, to let our action flow from the depths of who we are, from the compassion and wisdom that is inherent in our nature. Let the nature of scorpions be to sting. It's our nature to live out of love. Thinking about all the good you're doing or are going to do is an ego projection. Setting it aside, we can also lay down the burden of worries about failure to be good. Mary Oliver's poem, Wild Geese, begins, "You do not have to be good." That is, you only have to be who you are. And the poem continues in the next line, you only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Only then, as Zbigniew Herbert said, will you attain the good you will not attain. In the end, we are redeemed only by the kind of person it is our nature to be, not what we accomplish. The scorpion will sting. That's not what matters. As Zbigniew Herbert's poem said, the informers, executioners, cowards, they will win. Not what matters In the J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, the intrepid fellowship takes the risk of going through the mines of Moria, and their leader, Gandalf, falls to the Balrog. The rest of the company escapes, makes it out the other side, and has a brief chance to collect itself and take stock. Aragorn soliloquizes, "Gandalf, what hope have we without you?" He turned to the company. "We must do without hope," he said. It's a powerful line, and it's been with me since even before Cora Diamond's ethics seminar. We must do without hope. Doing without hope doesn't mean dejection or enervating depression, inability to act, giving up, rolling over. Hopelessness is not that kind of despair. "Let us gird ourselves and weep no more," says Aragorn in the next line. "Come, we have a long road." Hopelessness can help bring us into the present moment, help pull us back from the sort of hope that has us living in our imagined future instead of the present. In the realm of social action, this hopelessness means not clinging to an image in which other people have finally stopped being so foolish and pig-headed as to have values that differ from our own. There is another kind of hope, which isn't about the future being different in any particular way that you or I would call better. It's about acting here and now without knowing what effect, if any, the action will have. It's about what the poet John Keats called negative capability, the capacity not to insist on a determinate, knowable meaning. It's about doing what we are called to do, not to make the world over in our image, but only to be who we are. It's about being courageous, joining the resistance with our hearts and our breath and our love and our being, and being comfortable not being able to predict what will come of it. It's about listening deeply, speaking truth, and then letting go. Any other kind of hope is really another name for fear. What commonly goes by the name hope, hope for a specific result, is non-acceptance. It's fear of the world as it is or the world as we are afraid it may become. A.J. Muste, a lifelong activist who died in 1967, protested the Vietnam War outside the White House day after day, usually alone, sometimes in the rain. One day, Muste was approached by a reporter. "Do you really think you're going to change those people?" asked the reporter, indicating toward the White House. "I don't do it to change them," replied Muste. "I do it so they won't change me." It's not that Muste or I don't want to be changed. It's just that we want to resist the forces that would keep us from our calling, that would occlude the compassion from flowing out from us, to what end we cannot see and do not control. Of course, strategizing is a part of doing. Goals and outcomes and plans for achieving are the manifestations of compassion. It's just that it's possible to plan for results without expecting them, counting on them, or needing them. Our hearts turn over to grace, their labor, their sweat, all that our hearts are and have. Grace has its own way of shaping what our hearts bequeath it.
Please say with me these words as we extinguish our chalices. The flame is now ours to carry. The encouraging fire of spiritual growth, the warmth of acceptance, the light of love. These abide in our hearts, in our words, and in the work of our hands.
May you go forth from this service, knowing you are good and you are loved.
Take your light and your life forth. Use it to bless the world.
And stay safe until we meet again.
Go in peace.
If you got troubles, then I've got 'em too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. If we stick together, we can see it through. 'Cause you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me. Now some of you folks might be a little smarter than I am. Maybe, but none of them will ever love you the way I do. Just me and you, boy. And as the years go by, our friendship will never die. You're gonna see it's our destiny. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me.
Val Capers, one of our favorite musical guests at CUUC, was the first blind graduate of the Juilliard School. This is her tribute to Thelonious Monk.